Hello, Michael Gigani, and this is Straight Talk. With me today is Dr. Kwok Kaki. Dr. Kwok, thank you very much. You are a doctor, and you're also a LegCo member.
Yes.
Now, as a doctor, so I'm going to ask you this, okay? You're a doctor. Last week, I had Professor Fukuda here, a very well-known expert in dealing with diseases like this, contagious diseases like the Wuhan virus. Before then, I had Professor David Hui as well. Now, they both sat here, and I asked them both, you and me sitting here, do we need to wear a face mask? Now, you're also a doctor. Do we need to wear a face mask?
It depends on the condition and situation. If I were like in an indoor conditions, and if I were like having a cough, or the patient I met with is going to have, unknown history, I think at this moment of the time it's still better to wear a mask because, the Wuhan pneumonia has been proven to be spread in the community, and in fact we may have some invisible patient where we do not know who it is. Some of them, they are asymptomatic. They don't have any fever, they don't have any cough. They just carry the virus, just like the most recent cases in a family outbreak. Apart from one or two, majority of those patients which later or subsequently proven to carry the virus do not have fever, do not have any symptoms. So at this moment, I would rather be more safe and advise, the people of Hong Kong, my fellow citizens, in case of doubt, you better wear a mask.
But the two of us sitting here, we don't have any symptoms. Should we wear a mask? Well,
just like, I didn't have any symptoms at all, and you didn't, and you don't have any travel history, so am I. So I think it is quite safe at this moment in the room that I'm not wearing a mask, and so do you.
Well, the thing is, do you have enough face masks? You're a doctor, because I read that even private clinics are running out of face masks.
Not only my clinics, out of the mask, even the building, my building working on, we had more than 100 clinics.
They're running out of masks?
Yeah. No, not only the staff of the buildings, they all need to wear a mask. They did not have any masks, for the staff. So we need to, we're trying to order for them, no return. None of the supplier was able to provide with us any face mask until 1 or 2 months later. So we are running out of masks. And in my clinic, probably I can last for perhaps 1 month, and I don't know how to go next month.
So next month you'll be probably running out of masks. You don't know what you're going to do.
I'll try to get trying my best to get any mask, but I'm afraid at this moment it will be very difficult to get the supply.
Now, you mentioned the family and community spread. I think you're referring to the family that had a hot pot dinner, and many of them got infected. It was a large family, including people from the mainland, right? And then most of them came down with this new pneumonia, right? Is it a problem with the hot pot or what? Should people stop going to hot pot dinners?
Now, it is not exactly the hot pot, but the environment that people come close together, they're sitting together, drink and dine with close contact. We usually pack together in the hot pot table. We don't have any distance, maybe we're inches from the others. And they drink, and I was know that there was an indoor environment. They maybe have insufficient ventilation. And the hot pot may contribute some, but not all of the cause of the pneumonia. Now, right now, the way that the pneumonia has been able to transmit is usually 3 main ways. One is a direct contact. That means, when I touch, like my face or nose, and I touch somebody, shake hands, whatnot. Then
avoid shaking hands.
Yeah, and after you shake your hands, if you do not wash your hand and you pick your nose, your eyes, your mouth, then you get infected. This is a direct contact. And second is the droplets. Usually droplets, just like if I cough or sneeze, then it become just like a water particles. And if I touch, like on the sofa, on the desk, on the buttons of the lift, then if I didn't wash my hands and I put in my eyes or nose, then catch the disease. And the third, the newest report from Shanghai is saying that aerosol is one of the possible way. And aerosol is a very particular form of transmission. It usually will not exist in the ordinary circumstances. It's usually in the hospital settings, like people or patients under the ventilator, or after some medical procedures, like we need to suck out the sputum of the patient every day, to clear the airway. And some people using the very common ventilator like the CPAP, if people they have a sleep apnea, they will carry a CPAP while they are sleeping. And in that situation, or people having asthma, they will have some inhalations with the medicine and also some liquid, usually normal saline. And that occasion, the aerosol is directly coming from that. The differences between the aerosol from the direct from the spot droplets is that the droplets usually have a spread distance below 2 meters. But for the aerosol, it can come to 3 meters or slightly more than that. So you need a longer safety distance if it's a possibility of aerosol. In coming back to the hot pot situation, since it is hot pot, so you can imagine within the environment, the air is hot, particularly near the pot. And a lot of fumes, the water fumes, it is possible in that situation if that particular person cough or sneeze, then the droplets will fly in over. If they catch the fumes or the hot air, it will possibly become easier to form aerosol. It's
so
only easier for
the fumes or the hot air, it'll come to you if somebody else coughs.
Yes, it's basically it's still the droplets, but it may become aerosol if somehow it get in touch with the hot air.
I just want to clarify something. You mentioned aerosol, and then you mentioned fumes, and you mentioned the hot air. So let's just clarify one thing. This new virus, coronavirus, it's not airborne, right? Let's explain to the viewers the difference between airborne and the difference between airborne and, like you say, aerosol. Aerosol, as the way I see it, is supposing if you spray something, that's aerosol, right?
Yes,
little droplets go, but it doesn't travel very far, right? Now, airborne could be anywhere in this entire room, right?
Yes.
Is this new pneumonia airborne?
Definitely not airborne.
It's not airborne.
The only infectious disease which can be spread by airborne is number 1, tuberculosis. Second is measles. They are proven to be spread airborne. So within the airs, you can't see it, but it's always there. So for the treatment of the tuberculosis and measles, it depends on the vaccination. So if the whole population is being
then you're all protected if they're all vaccinated.
All protected. And for the either it's aerosol or droplets, it's only a spectrum. It depends on the size of the particles. If it's very big, we call it droplets. If it's very small, then we
tiny
call it
little particles.
Yes,
right?
we call it aerosol, and it is only a spectrum. It's going from very tiny particle we call aerosol to the very big particle we call droplets.
So the thing is, if, for example, you cough, and I'm like maybe far away from you, I don't have to worry because it's not going to reach me.
Yeah, it won't reach. Like we are talking about droplets, it's usually less than 2 meters. Even if aerosol is 3 meters, so if you are standing maybe 5 meters from me, then you are protected.
Then you're safe.
Yeah.
And if you're in the open air and there's like a fresh breeze, then you don't really need to wear a
country
mask,
park,
right?
you don't need to.
You don't have to wear a
unless people just next to you cough, then you better protect yourself. Yeah.
Okay. Now the thing is, in the past few days, I can tell you, I've not been able to buy any toilet paper, tissue paper. That kind of thing happened 1 or 2 days in Singapore, and then it stopped. But it's still going on here now.
Yeah.
What can the government do about this?
You're
a LegCo member. You deal with government officials. What have they failed us?
The most important or the crucial matter at this moment is the people lacking the trust on the authority. Because if they don't have
There's a total lack of trust,
yes,
right?
a total lack of trust.
The government says, don't worry, we have enough, but yet people go there and line up every morning to fight for it.
Yeah, because the people would tend to think otherwise. If the government, like, Carrie Lam on the 28th of January, she claimed that she will not open any housing estate, new housing estate as a camp to isolate, possible people who may able to transmit the virus. She said so few weeks, 1 or 2 weeks ago, and then she changed her mind 2 days ago. So if you are people living near the resident nearby the housing estate, what will you think? Will you have any trust on the government? And if you heard what the government said to you, you no need to worry about anything, because we are going to give you anything you want. And then you go to the street, you couldn't buy any masks.
You cannot. I mean, you cannot buy masks. You cannot buy. I couldn't buy rice. I couldn't buy canned food. I couldn't buy anything.
So the reality is always fall short of the claims by the government. And people in Hong Kong, they learned that the only way to protect themselves is do it yourself. You need to protect yourself.
But that's a dangerous thing, Dr. Kwok. If the people have lost complete trust in the government, what do we do next?
We can't have the answer. It would be the government to give the answer. Why the government always is not trustworthy? Because we have seeing that for years since the takeover, that all our chief executive seems to have lost in touch with the people of Hong Kong, and particularly in these 2 years, Carrie Lam, and the whole period of the extradition bills, you see her performance. It's actually fall short of the expectation of the people of Hong Kong. We can't really trust her.
Okay, quick break, Susan, don't go away. Thanks for staying with us. This is Straight Up With Me is Dr. Kwok Ka-ki. Dr. Kwok Ka-ki, you're a doctor as well as the Legislative Council member from the Democracy Camp. Now, you said that there is now in Hong Kong definitely a local community spread, right?
Yes.
How worried should we be? What should we do?
Now, come to the better half of the truth. Most of the patients having or catching a disease is of the mild degree, although we have one fatal cases. So a lot of the people, if they are strong enough, they should be okay. But for the elderly and for those who have chronic diseases, they should be very careful, because the chances of them catching a disease have very major complications very high. One of the most recent articles written by the doctors in Wuhan saying that the mortality in that particular study is 4%, and the percentage of people requiring intensive care is 1/4. So it is very alarming. So I would advise, elderly residents and people who have chronic diseases, try to stay at home.
Just don't go out, right?
Just
stay
don't
at
go
home.
out. Yeah.
But you cannot buy face masks.
Yeah, they
anyway.
couldn't get a face mask. It's very expensive. It's nearly
Should the government control the price of face masks?
They should.
Other countries have handed out face masks to their citizens, like in Taiwan and Singapore.
The
But,
most,
not in Hong
even
Kong.
for you wanted to control the price, but it doesn't really work. In our society, it doesn't have that particular legislation. It is usually quite difficult to enact legislation saying that the price, because if the supplier gives to you, the price is 20 times the original price. If you are the distributor, if you are at the retail segment, how could you control the price? Because you are not the one who control the price. So the better thing is that the government trying to purchase this face mask and sell at cost to the resident, just like Singapore, Macau, Taiwan, they're doing.
That, right.
I think that should be the way. We ask repeatedly that whether our government should do so, and repeatedly Carrie Lam refused to do so. I think
everything she says is not possible, we cannot do this, cannot close the borders, and then eventually she comes under pressure, and then she does it step by step, like squeezing toothpaste out of a tube.
Yes, exactly.
That's exactly what she's been doing, even with the protest movement,
Yes,
the same
yes.
thing. But is this thing going to become a pandemic globally, you think?
It is already there. We see the epidemics to many countries nowadays. And, countries like Japan. You never thought of Japan will have so many cases. And right now, Japan has more than 90 cases.
But it's because of that ship that was there, right?
Yes, we all know that. But the second stage or the subsequent stage will be how good the global effort can stop the disease, in China only. And that is most effective way. So that's why we are saying why we close the border, simply because of that. We are not doing something to discriminate the country, never.
But they're saying that it's discrimination, it's racism, and I think Carrie Lam said that.
Yeah, I think it's quite stupid. People claiming that it's a kind of, discrimination. Just like in Hong Kong, if you think about in SARS in 2003, a lot of countries closed the entrance from Hong Kong. We never, accusing other countries of, you really.
Well, right now you and I cannot take a plane or whatever to go to
like Taiwan.
Yeah,
of course.
or the Philippines. And some cruise line companies have said anybody from Hong Kong or China, Macau, they will not let them become
We
passengers.
deserve that. We deserve that because people, if they judge what has been done by our government, they see no difference us from the mainland. So
if Carrie Lam had closed the borders a lot sooner, now 3 crossings are still open.
yes, of course.
If she had done it a lot sooner,
if she doing as even as of today, she didn't want to close the border. So my worry is, maybe 1 or 2 weeks later, Hong Kong will be screened from traveling to many places in the world, and that is, is really giving a hurt or an impact on our trade, on our economic activities and financial activities. It's actually hurting Hong Kong a lot. And
you think that eventually, if we continue
like that,
will stop
and people
us.
seeing that we have widespread community spread, put it this way, then we couldn't accuse anybody of stopping our travels. It is so natural for any countries, any city to protect.
Then do you support the nurses, the healthcare workers strike has ended for now? They came under a lot of criticism. You're a doctor. They say close all the borders, and then they were accused of being selfish, not helping people when they were ill. Did you support that strike?
I support them. It's not only myself supporting. The most recent opinion poll at that very moment is nearly 80% of the respondents in Hong Kong, ordinary people, supporting them. The reason is very simple. If you were working, I have been working in the public sectors. I couldn't differentiate any patients that whether he's telling the truth. I don't even know where he has been traveled to China, whether he had contact, but I have no choice. I have to take care of this patient. And not only myself, but the whole ward. We have some 60, 80 patients exposed to the same risk. And the whole hospital. Nowadays, when we are talking, the Princess Margaret Hospital, where we have the specialized center for that, already filled up. All the patients need to be admitted to the 6 major hospitals in Hong Kong. That means any major hospital in Hong Kong will be exposed to the risk. We have from 1,000 to 2,000 patients in the hospital. They are carrying the same risk.
In fact, I read something just very recently from the former head of the U.S. Centers for Disease Control, who said that, in fact, the hospitals are where this thing is spreading the fastest. It's in the hospital.
Exactly. The most recent study from Wuhan, 40% of the patient is actually spread within the hospital.
Right. So the people who criticize the nurses, for saying close all the borders.
They are not selfish. They are protecting the other patients. If you were the patient, you have no choice. Like I have a heart disease, I have a stroke. I have no choice. I need to admit it to the public hospital. Then I would be exposed to the same risk as the medical staff. I will be, at the end of the day, suffering from Wuhan pneumonia. I may probably die from Wuhan pneumonia.
Well, the doctor in mainland, in Wuhan, he died. He was 34 years old.
Exactly. So that's why
he exposed it, but then he was reprimanded, and the thing was covered up for almost a month, right?
It is very sad. It's very sad. People saying the truth will be, taken to the authority, shunned from speaking out. And in Hong Kong, if we are condemning the doctors or nurses of doing so, we are doing the similar thing as of the.
But do you think authority. That if this doctor's advice and warning had been taken earlier, way back in December, we wouldn't be where we are today? Wuhan wouldn't be what it is today.
Of course, because the most important point is that you need to control the disease. You need to identify isolate and treat the patient as soon as possible. The later you acknowledge the disease, you are allowing more time for this disease to spread. And once it spread, beyond control, you can't even,
Can we control it now? People say if the hot weather comes like SARS, it'll go away.
It doesn't really happen. You heard about MERS, the Middle East Respiratory Syndrome. It started in 2012, and still of today, it is still spreading in a smaller scale. So we never know. 2003 SARS has disappeared totally, but MERS still persists. So it will be very difficult. It's just on the goodwill. We are hoping that the disease will be end by summer. But if we are not doing anything enough, it won't stop. It just spread.
Are you optimistic or pessimistic about this disease, or whether it'll stop spreading or whether
I'm afraid to tell you at this moment I'm not optimistic at all. We are still far from what we need to do in Hong Kong.
What can our government do? I mean, Carrie Lam is going to be there for yet another 2 years or so. and the way she handled the protest movement and the way she is handling this new virus, people have been comparing her with the Prime Minister of Singapore, who did an excellent job reassuring that city, yes. Prime Minister Lee, that, calm down, you don't have to rush and buy things. And people listened and sought kind of inspiration from him. But our Carrie Lam is kind of disappeared.
Difficult, isn't it? The moment when she stand up to speak to the public in Hong Kong, we are quite afraid that she is speaking otherwise. We have been witnessing for years, at least for the past 2 years. So we needed to close the border, at least to the mainland travelers. We need to have a really workable quarantine, which is not at this moment the so-called voluntary quarantine, which is useless. We need to protect our medical staff, giving them the adequate equipment. We need to find the face masks to the public to protect them. But all of those should be done, never being met.
Is it too late now?
Never too late. If she really want to change her attitude, she never listen to other people. She never really give her heart. Trying to sit down and talk to any people opposing her, and that is the most crucial factors affecting Hong Kong.
I've got 30 seconds. What is your advice to Hong Kong people? You say you're not optimistic. What is your advice to Hong Kong people?
Apart from pressing on the chief executive, we need to protect ourselves. So really, we need to stop from going to the crowd. Always try to wash your hands is even more important than wearing a mask. If you don't have a mask, please stay home. And the most important thing, protect the elderly and the people with chronic disease at your home. And if you have any extra mask, please give it to those sort of them, like the poor
Instead
people.
Instead of storing it all up for
never
yourself, like storing up rice and toilet paper.
Don't go to supermarket to have panic buying. You are hurting other people.
All right. I've got to end it right there. Thank you very much. See you next time. Good evening.